Welcome to the Side Hustle to Small Business podcast powered by Hiscox. I'm your host, Sanjay Parekh. Throughout my career, I've had side hustles, some of which have turned into real businesses. But first and foremost, I'm a serial technology entrepreneur. In the creator space, we hear plenty of advice on how to hustle harder and why you can sleep when you're dead. On this show, we ask new questions in hopes of getting new answers. Questions like, how can small businesses work smarter? How do you achieve balance between work and family? How can we redefine success in our businesses so that we don't burn out after year 3? Every week, I sit down with business founders at various stages of their side hustle to small business journey. These entrepreneurs are pushing the envelope while keeping their values. Keep listening for conversation, context, and camaraderie. Morgan Hancock is a commercial real estate agent, U.S. Army veteran, mother of 2, and a passionate advocate of the arts. But most recently, she's the founder of Bourbon with Heart, a nonprofit that has a mission to leverage the influence and popularity of bourbon to raise funds for local charities, while also providing a first-class arts experience for Kentuckians. Here today to share the origin story of Bourbon with Heart and how she balances her business, her family, and her wellness is Morgan Hancock. Morgan, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So I'm excited to have you on, not only because I'm a fellow Kentuckian, but because you're diving deep into the arts, which has lately been a passion of mine as well. But before we get into all of that, give us a little bit about your background. Give us a couple of minutes about, like who you are, where you came from, and how you got to where you are now.
Well, anytime I'm asked this question, there's not an easy answer because my background has been all over the place. I have worked in just about every industry. I've had a lot of different ventures that are seemingly disconnected. But I am from Kentucky. I was just born in a small town called Litchfield, Kentucky. I grew up as a only child until I was grown and had my own children. And then I got 3 more siblings. So all my siblings are younger than my son. But I was always a child with an overactive imagination, loved the arts, loved creating, kind of always a rebel. And I think that's just led me, to all these different entrepreneurial ventures and to my latest one that I'm excited to talk about.
So I think that's so super fascinating because I think the best entrepreneurs are exactly that, right? They get all of these different experiences over time and you kind of integrate them together. So is this the first time you're doing something entrepreneurial? And were there any entrepreneurs in your family that you got to watch as you were growing up?
This is definitely not the first time. I think I started entrepreneurial ventures as young as I can remember. And I do have an entrepreneur in my family. Most are not though, but my dad, I remember he started at Walmart, just worked at Walmart, and then worked his way up to owning, multiple stores, multiple locations. And, he's his own businessman now in business for himself. So
I got to ask you then, so you said you started when you were really young. What was the first entrepreneurial thing that you did that you remember?
Oh my gosh. Well, I've never told this story publicly before, but this is going to sound really weird. But for some reason, I thought that it would be a good idea to go around to the houses in my neighborhood and offer to kind of give like in-home like spa services. I was probably only like 10. And I remember I even made business cards on Word with like clip art, and there was this person hanging at the end of this rope, and it said like, at the end of your rope, like feeling stressed, like let me, help. And I guess the weird part of that story is when I think about being 10 and knocking on strangers' doors, asking if they want a massage or something. And then why did my parents
like, wait,
allow...
is this a trick? Is this entrapment? Like, what is happening here? I don't understand.
And I'm charged 5 cents a minute.
5 cents a minute. Okay, I gotta ask, how did you do price discovery on that? Like, how did you pick 5 cents a minute as the price point?
I don't know, but I also talked my friend into doing it with me. So it was two of us going around and knocking on strangers' doors. And I remember distinctly this one time this lady let us come in and give her this whole pamper day and massage and all this. And she gave us a $5 bill, which was more than what the 5 cents a minute should have been. And
Right.
we like thought we hit the jackpot. We were like, oh my gosh, she paid us so much more than what our price is. But yeah, looking back, like that's sort of embarrassing, but that's a true story. And why did my parents allow this? It's probably another question. It doesn't sound safe at all.
That's super interesting. So you did have some paying customers doing that. It sounds like more
Yes,
than one.
we did, and we survived. We weren't kidnapped or killed, and I don't recall any criminal activity. So it worked. I wouldn't suggest that to any children or parents these days, but it worked. It worked out. So I guess I've never really thought about that's the start to my entrepreneurial journey. Nickel a minute massages to strangers in my neighborhood as a child.
I love that. So listeners to this podcast will know that I often talk about one thing that a lot of early entrepreneurs have done, and I did too growing up, is candy bar arbitrage. So I used to buy candy bars, take them to school, sell them to other kids for more than what I paid for them because their parents wouldn't give them candy bars. And then for me, at least, I would use the difference, of course, to buy more candy bars. I got to replenish that stock. But I bought comic books with my extra money. What did you end up buying with your money from the massage business?
Oh my goodness. I don't remember what I bought, but now you have me thinking because I just remembered what I would consider my second entrepreneurial venture was I had mentioned that my dad owned these stores and we had a lot of these Beanie Babies. They were like collectible at the time.
I remember Beanie Babies. Yeah.
Yeah. And so he had like a whole lot of these. And I had just thought, well, if I was just going to take them, put them out in the yard like a yard sale and sell them all, but I was going to sell them for more than what they were retailing for. And I was like, well, if I just pay him back, he'll be happy that I sold them. But I didn't realize that they were worth far more than what the retail was. So I sold them all for $2 more when they were $200 collectors. And I sold out in a hour because people drive by and saw these collector Beanie Babies that I had taken from my dad's store and sold. And so I remember I thought he was going to be proud, and he was not happy because I sold all his collector Beanie Babies for much less than they were worth.
Well, I think all of these stories kind of point to some question of what was happening in the household there, because they let you do massages in people's houses and then walk away with collector Beanie Babies that were not apparently under lock and key. So I don't know. I feel like, I don't know that you're entirely at fault in kind of any of these stories. But let's switch gears to kind of what you're doing now. How did you get your start in launching Bourbon with Heart?
So I've always loved the arts. I've always considered myself a creative. I've always been a writer and an artist, and performing arts and everything, and comedy, which comedy is an art form. And so and I can't say I haven't always loved bourbon. I didn't start loving that at age 10 or
Oh, we would have all kinds of questions at that point about your parents, but yeah.
No, I was 12 when I started loving bourbon. But no, I've loved bourbon. Bourbon is a huge part of our Kentucky. It's the most powerful industries that we have: bourbon, horse racing, and it's something that really brings Kentuckians together. If you're Kentuckian, you love bourbon, and the whole world, knows Kentucky as the leader of the bourbon industry. But what they don't know Kentucky for is our rich and thriving arts culture. And arts are big in Kentucky, and we have a ton of talent here, and that's just not well known. So this organization is kind of a way to use that existing popularity and influence of bourbon to bring that awareness to our rich and thriving arts culture.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, okay. So when you started kind of thinking about this, um, was it like you had a history with bourbon? You had access to bourbon? Like, how did you think like, hey, I want to do something with arts, do something with bourbon. But how do I get access to these things to make sure that I can make it all happen?
Yeah, that's a good question. I did have access to bourbon a couple different ways. I have worked in advertising for a long time, so through that, I was already working with the brands, and then also my fiance of 5 years, and yes, we've been engaged like 5 years, but he's he owns a fire protection company and does the fire protection for almost all of the distilleries in Kentucky.
Ah,
Fire protection is very important when it comes to bourbon. It's flammable. And so between those two, between fire protection and the advertising, I was already pretty well connected with the bourbon industry.
yeah. So, okay. So you decided to start this thing. Um, you had entrepreneurial experiences, some crazy ones. But I think all entrepreneurs, they always have something that kind of scares them or they worry about. What scared you about starting Bourbon with Heart?
So I think sometimes I think whatever that thing is that scares people, it's broken in me, and maybe I needed a little bit more. I should maybe be scared of things. So I would say I wasn't necessarily scared of, what if this doesn't work or anything like that. The kind of fear that I get with any entrepreneurial venture, and it's really quite unreasonable, but is once I get a good idea and I love the idea, I suddenly start panicking and thinking everyone's wanting to do this idea and I've got to hurry up and do it faster than them or it's going to get taken from me. And so that's exactly what happened with this. Cause I just thought there's no way people haven't thought to combine bourbon and art. And there's no way they're not doing a bourbon barrel art in Kentucky. There's no way these things aren't happening. So just panicking, like thinking, I got to do this as fast as possible. That's kind of where my fear comes in.
Yeah. So how do you, for you, how do you overcome that fear or manage that fear?
Um, I guess there's no way to totally overcome it other than I just do it. And then that I just get out there in front of it and I get the idea out there. And then I kind of start to calm down once I realize that, okay, I'm talking about this. No one's coming out of the woodwork and wanting to do the same idea. And this will be mine and I can do this and it'll be fine. So really just by doing it.
Yeah. Do you have that fear anymore? Or have you realized like, hey, that was an irrational fear. There is nobody else doing this.
No, I have that fear a lot every day.
You still have that fear. This far into it, you still have that fear.
Now it's not with Bourbon with Heart, with someone wanting to do a arts bourbon organization, but it's now, with every new idea that I get, I'm doing bourbon barrel bow ties for Derby. It's actually bow ties made out of bourbon barrel.
Oh, wow.
And I've already actually go pick them up tomorrow. I have a group of local veteran woodworkers. They realize that woodworking helps their PTSD. They're making them. I go pick them up tomorrow. And, I even think, oh no, everyone's going to want to do bourbon barrel bow ties for Derby. I've got to get these. And then I have to go, Morgan, if they haven't done bourbon barrel bow ties in this many years for Derby,
yeah,
it's going to be okay. So just kind of talking to myself. And
so I gotta ask. So the bow tie part of itself is the wooden part. You're not tying that, obviously, right? So then there's a fabric strap that goes to it. I'm trying to like imagine what this is like.
Yeah, well, really soon you'll be able to see it. Yeah. So people have made wooden bow ties, but not out of bourbon barrel. Obviously, they're gonna look the same because it's wood, but we know and the brand know that Kentucky will know it's made out of bourbon barrels. So yeah, it's wooden, and then it will have a neck strap and like a regular bow tie. But in a way, it's nice because they stay put. They don't.
Yeah. I mean, I learned something new today because I didn't even know that wooden bow ties were even a thing.
They are, and these are going to be incredible because I'm starting with making 50 of them, and each one is going to be either hand painted by local artists
Nice.
or carved, or it's called pyrography, where you will burn the design into them.
Yeah.
So then there's really nothing like it. And it's actually going to be an art gallery as well, leading up to Derby. So they're going to be in shadow boxes along a wall, an art gallery,
Cool.
and they can be purchased and then worn to Derby.
Oh, that's neat. That's neat. I love that. Okay, so let's kind of switch a little bit and talk about, you've got obviously a ton of ideas for what you're doing. So how do you manage the stress of owning this and working full time with everything else that happens in life?
I think that, there's no like X plus Y equals Z formula for really anything in life. So for me, it's just, I kind of just lean into the chaos and I kind of just thrive in it. So it's not, I guess that's really the best answer. I just kind of lean into it and I know that it's okay if everything's kind of crazy and the days are crazy. And that's really, that's what makes it fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think about like setting boundaries? And if so, how do you set those boundaries and think about them? Like, you've got kids and you've got, friends and life, and then you've got work, and with the things that you're doing, they kind of probably blend a little bit, right? Because some of those people are involved in the things that you're doing. But how do you think about those boundaries for yourself?
So I am fortunate because my fiance is also an entrepreneur, business owner. So he comes along for the ride for a lot of these, as I do with him as well. And so, with someone who wasn't, they wouldn't understand those things. So boundaries would look a lot different. And then with my children, they're 13 and 20. So, and my 20-year-old is already starting the same. He came up with a clothing line idea the other day. He says he wants to call it Creatively Dead. I'm not totally sure what that means, but it sounds kind of cool. And it's because, he said he's creatively dead. He says, you're so creative, I'm creatively dead. But then he said, well, that might be a cool brand name. I go, well, that's not creatively dead. Then that sounds creatively alive. But I guess, so for me, I bring these people into my world and we share these things. So setting boundaries maybe looks a little different for us than it may for other families.
Yeah. Yeah. Sense. Well, I'll say the Grateful Dead did pretty well with that name and what they did. So if that's any indication, your son's going to do well with Creatively Dead.
True.
How do you think about, so, in your day, do you have like an exercise routine and how do you work that into your days? Because as entrepreneurs, we work a lot, right? There's always things to do.
Yeah. So probably nobody feels like they exercise as much as, they should. Right. But again, I kind of just try to make it a team. I kind of try to make it where I can be productive while I'm doing these things. Mm-hmm. So, my fiance and I might go for a walk together, but of course the whole time we go on our nightly walk, we're talking, we're planning, we're strategizing. So it doesn't feel like wasted time. And I also discovered something new, physician-assisted stretching, that I'm obsessed with. And so I do that a few times a week, and it's been I feel it awesome. So I'd highly suggest physician-assisted stretching.
Physician-assisted stretching. So what does that mean? So you go and see a doctor and they help you stretch?
Yeah, basically. So, if you were going to stretch yourself, you can only stretch so far because you're just going to stop.
Right.
Because it hurts. But you kind of get strapped down and they will isolate one muscle at a time and they stretch it as far as they can. And it's not painful at all. And you feel incredible. And I don't know how, apparently it burns calories. And I love it because I'm they say it's exercising and you're just laying there getting stretching. That's this is the best exercise ever. But I highly suggest it. I'm addicted to it. And the first time I did it, I walked out of there. I think I was 2 inches taller. You gotta try it.
So, okay, I got to ask about this because this is the first time I've ever heard about this. So is it a special kind of doctor that you have to find to do this, or? Or what is it that you go like, if I'm searching, if I'm a listener to this podcast, I'm like, I want to do physician assisted stretching. Like, what do I search for? Who do I search for?
Well, I don't know what it's called in other places, but what it's called in my city, it's a very fitting name. It's called the Stretch Zone.
Okay. Oh, so there's like a company, an organization, and so you're making a point. So how many times a week are you going? You're going, what do you say? 2-3 times a week?
Yeah. Yeah,
Two or
you go
three
for
times a week.
30 minutes.
Okay.
And you can, for all the entrepreneurs out there, you can like just be on your phone while they're stretching your lower body.
Okay.
Body, so you have to like break your email session there. But it really is great. I've been doing it for about 4 months now, like religiously, and it's one of my favorite times of the week. And I feel so much better when it's over. I don't know all the science behind what it does. You just have to Google physician assisted stretching. And when I went, first time I thought, oh, it's just going to be me and like a bunch of senior citizens in here like stretching. Like, what is this just stretching? But I went and it was all athletes. Because this,
right.
It's great for you. And I was skeptical, but I'm a believer.
How is it that you got hooked into this originally? Did somebody tell you about it, or how did you find out?
Well, sitting at my desk all day, every day, you're constantly like your neck back, and I was like, I've got to do something because this is not gonna be good for me when I get older. And so I, just Googled, ways to help, your neck or sitting at a desk all day, and it said stretching. And then I think I started getting ads for this stretch zone because, you Google a word and all of a sudden they're targeting you. And I booked the free consultation, and next thing I know, I'm like their biggest advocate. Wow.
That is fascinating. I've definitely learned something so far, and we've still got a few more minutes of stuff I want to talk about. So, okay, now you're super loose and stretched out.
Yes.
How do you account for kind of sleep and other wellness stuff in kind of your time and growing your business?
I do try to make it a point to every night when I shut stuff down, at least spend an hour, 2 hours kind of winding down, talking with my fiance. I mean, I make that a point that I spend that time. I don't just work until I can't keep my eyes open any longer. So we do that, and we try to make sure we have a show or something that we are into or watch together. And so just kind of keeping that is a boundary, I guess, keeping that boundary, and, just kind of helps us. At the end of the day, we have a glass of bourbon or 2 or 3. And so sleep, just really hasn't, I probably get 6-7 hours a night.
Okay. So I got to ask, cause I'm a TV junkie too. What's the most recent favorite show that you guys are watching?
Well, we've, let's see. So ironically, last night we watched the documentary of Richard Branson. We're addicted to the master classes.
Oh,
I
yes.
don't know if you have the app. So it's not really a TV show, but you can airplay it onto your TV.
Yep.
So we will watch master classes. It's kind of nerdy now that I think about that, but that's we'll watch master classes. So that's another thing I highly suggest is the masterclass app. It's worth every penny.
I love it. Okay. So now, you've been doing this for a little over a year now. And if you could go back in time and do something differently, what is that you do differently? Or is there anything that you do differently?
Yeah. I mean, that's always a hard question. I've certainly done things, that I probably don't think were the best decision, but I guess I can't say I would do anything differently because whatever I did is how I got here, and I'm really living kind of my dream life right now.
Yeah. There isn't something that you're like, oh, if I'd known this now, then what I know now, I would have been able to do this better or somewhat differently.
I mean, I started my massage business at 10. I don't know what else I could have done earlier or sooner. But, no, I guess I just, if there ever has been a time where I've had a hesitation, I would just maybe wish I didn't have any hesitation. Or if there were opportunities where I was maybe a little scared to to take them. One thing is not if I see an opportunity and I think, oh, well, I don't want to be too pushy, or I don't want to bug that person, I don't want to ask them for that. I should have always just pushed and asked, because what's the worst that's going to happen?
I think that's great advice. And I think that's the thing that holds back a lot of people from entrepreneurship. But is there anything else that you would think of that somebody that's thinking about taking the leap and doing a side hustle or turning their side hustle into a full-time business, what would you tell them? Definitely not go into strangers' houses and give them massages. So that's number one. But after that,
anytime I'm starting a new venture, pursuing a new idea, I just always ask myself, what's the worst that could happen? Mm-hmm. And that really is what I would have them ask themselves. What's the worst that could happen? I mean, the worst that can happen is it doesn't work out, and that's not really all that bad.
Yeah. I think, yes, you're right. 100%. I believe that too. I think a lot of people over exaggerate the downside of not succeeding. And I'm not sure why that is. And I think that's the thing that holds back a lot of people from being entrepreneurs. And so, when you, obviously when you were doing the massage business, you didn't think of any downside, but after that, the first time you did something kind of real, how did you kind of get rid of that fear of what's the worst that could happen?
Yeah. I've had a lot of different, ventures, and I'm not doing most of them anymore. So that means they either didn't work out, or it ended up not being for me. And so I guess the way that when I would get over that fear would just be, I'm the worst that could happen is I'm right back here where I started.
Yeah.
I wish I had a better answer for you, but I just think that perspective can really help people. Like you said, you're exaggerating worst case scenario most of the time.
Yeah.
Because when you say that people are afraid, success won't work out, well, what does that really mean? It may just not work out right then.
Yeah.
But this is, a long ball game.
Right.
So should do the next thing.
Yeah. Yeah. This is not a one and done type of situation. There's many at bats that everybody has. This has been fantastic. Where can our listeners find and connect with you?
So bourbonwithheart.org is our website. And then on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, same. It's just Bourbon with Heart. And then if you want to me personally, Instagram, Facebook, Morgan Brooke with the E, Hancock.
I love it. I love it. Thanks for coming on, Morgan.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Side Hustle to Small Business podcast, powered by Hiscox. To learn more about how Hiscox can help protect your small business through intelligent insurance solutions, visit hiscox.com. That's HISCOX.com. And if you have a story you want to hear on this podcast, please visit hiscox.com/share your story. I'm your host, Sanjay Parekh. You can find me on Twitter at Sanjay, that's SANJAY, or on my website at sanjayparekh.com.